would love to work with Eddie. Eddie won't return my call, so maybe one day we'll have a conversation. But I think Eddie got to a place in his life, he's like, look, I've done it all.
I love my wife, and I'm not gay, and I'm not, and that's what's weird about this, to have your sexuality questioned.
Or whether it's drugs. It's his business, it's America. But I want somebody to start pushing manhood, because I've seen 50 years worth of televised emasculation.
Who is Eddie Murphy really freezing out? At 64, the comedy legend has worked with nearly everybody in Hollywood. But there's one man he flat out refuses to share the screen with, Tyler Perry. This isn't just some casual distance. This is a wall Eddie has built, and nobody seems able to climb it. Where did this Hollywood frostbite really begin? When did the tension shift from a simple business clash to something way more personal? And then there are the whispers, the rumors Eddie has shut down hard over the years, sometimes even snapping back with biting remarks. People close to the situation say the tension isn't just about scripts or egos, but something deeper, tied to the way both men guard their private lives. Eddie's refusal to ever film with Perry feels like more than just a creative disagreement. It's a stand he's made, one that keeps stirring speculation every time the two names come up together. But to understand how explosive this is, you gotta look at Tyler Perry's rise. His journey is one of Hollywood's most inspiring. A kid from New Orleans, scarred by a tough childhood, moving to Atlanta in the early 90s, chasing a dream no one believed in. He scraped by, writing plays for years until 1999, when he introduced the world to Madea in I Can Do Bad all by myself. That moment flipped his life forever. By the mid-2000s, Perry wasn't just a playwright, he was a powerhouse. He built an empire in Atlanta, opened doors for countless black actors, writers, and filmmakers, and rewrote the rules for what Hollywood thought was possible. Yet, despite all that success, one thing still hangs in the air. Why does Eddie Murphy refuse to link up with him? But behind all that blockbuster success, Tyler Perry's name has always carried a shadow of whispers. For years, Hollywood has quietly buzzed with rumors about his sexuality, the kind of gossip that clings no matter how much he stays silent. Unlike other stars who spill their private lives to the tabloids, Perry has kept his world locked up tight, and that secrecy only poured gas on the speculation. Hollywood thrives on prying into the intimate lives of its stars, and Perry's silence turned him into a mystery people couldn't resist dissecting. Insiders say this isn't by accident, it's strategy. A veteran executive told The Hollywood Reporter back in 2018 that Perry's choice to stay quiet wasn't about shame, it was survival. Tyler knows the stigma, the source said, pointing straight at the way black men in Hollywood have been boxed in, stereotyped, and judged the moment they don't fit into certain molds. This executive made it crystal clear. Perry isn't just guarding his heart, he's guarding his empire. His silence is a shield, protecting both his brand and his privacy in an industry where one label can stick forever. And then there's his style. The polished suits, the larger-than-life characters, the dramatic flair that keeps audiences glued to his work. Some people call it flamboyant. Others say it's just Perry playing the game better than anyone else, giving fans enough performance to keep them entertained while never letting the world see too much of the man behind the curtain. Tyler Perry's art has always carried double meaning. His plays and shows circle around love, family, and acceptance, themes that some folks see as quiet reflections of his own battles with identity and society's expectations. To many, those storylines aren't just entertainment, they're coded confessions, subtle hints about the man behind the Madea wig. But Perry's role in the culture is bigger than his films. He's positioned himself as a powerful black ally to the LGBTQ+ community. Back in 2021, when Georgia's anti-LGBTQ+ legislation had the industry up in arms, Perry didn't hide in the shadows. He spoke up. He threw his weight behind inclusion and acceptance, using shows like The Oval as cultural weapons while making public statements that made it clear where he stood. Yet even while championing rights, Perry stayed fiercely private, keeping his own personal world sealed away from prying eyes. That's where the tension lies. Hollywood's obsession with Perry's private life is about more than curiosity. It's about power. The industry has long boxed black men into narrow roles, pushing stereotypes about masculinity while punishing anyone who dares to step outside them. Perry's silence, it's not just about privacy, it's a chess move, a way to keep control in an industry that will flip your narrative the second you slip. So why do the rumors keep coming? For years, Perry's single status fueled questions. Fans and media alike kept asking, how does a man who built an empire, who could have anyone he wants, still keep his love life invisible? The lack of answers only added more heat, turning Perry into Hollywood's favorite mystery, one that refuses to be solved.
Serious. Y'all running around here talking about some eye out to Tyler Perry. You can look at Tyler Perry and tell that he's quite gay. Tyler Perry's been gay for a long time. Long before I met Tyler Perry, he was gay.
Winston Jerome,
Yes.
who is very lightly veiled as Tyler Perry.
Yes.
Winston Jerome is a closeted cross-dressing cult leader whose love of the Christian faith is a mask for his true sexuality. From what I understand, Tyler Perry was furious over this. Furious.
Yeah. That's what I heard.
Some people saw Tyler Perry's silence as intentional, almost like he was daring Hollywood to keep guessing. Others brushed it off, saying he was just a man who wanted to separate his empire from his private world, a choice plenty of moguls make. But in Perry's case, the mystery only deepened because of the way he carried himself. Polished, charming, sometimes flamboyant, and always larger than life. To some, it felt like a mask. To others, it was the real him shining through. Behind the curtain, insiders whisper that Perry's whole public image, the humor, the warmth, the explosive characters like Madea, was crafted not just to entertain, but to redirect attention away from the questions he never wanted to answer. And true to form, Perry has never confirmed or denied the rumors. Instead, he doubled down on what he does best, creating. Every time whispers get too loud, he shifts the spotlight back to his writing, directing, producing, and acting. A creative machine who refuses to pause for explanations. But here's the bigger truth. This isn't just about Perry. This is about Hollywood's complicated relationship with black masculinity, identity, and power. The rumors around him are part of a much larger game the industry has been playing for decades, where whispers about sexuality aren't just gossip, they're weapons. For black men especially, those labels can be used to undermine careers, erase legacies, or control narratives. A Hollywood diversity advocate even explained it bluntly. For someone like Tyler, privacy isn't just a choice, it's protection. Protection from an industry that will take a rumor and twist it until it overshadows every achievement. For Perry, keeping his private life locked down isn't weakness, it's survival. In Hollywood, even the smallest hint can explode into a wildfire of gossip. And for Tyler Perry, the scrutiny has been relentless. Some industry whispers go even further, claiming his silence isn't just about personal privacy, but about guarding a massive, loyal fan base, one deeply rooted in the church. Perry built his empire on uplifting black families, faith, and spirituality, so the way the public perceives his private life carries serious weight. Any misstep could risk shaking the foundation of the very audience that turned him into a mogul. That's why the rumors around him sting so much harder. Perry's brand isn't just movies and TV shows, it's morality, family values, and community. To many of his church-going supporters, he's more than an entertainer. He's a symbol of perseverance and faith. So speculation about his identity has always clashed with the image his productions represent. That tension is what keeps the whispers alive, fueling conspiracy theories and late-night chatter in Hollywood's back rooms. But here's the twist. While staying silent about his own life, Perry has been loud about his stance on equality. He's gone on record fighting against anti-LGBTQ+ laws, and he's written LGBTQ+ characters into his shows, proving his work embraces inclusivity and acceptance. That duality, the private man versus the public advocate, only adds layers to his story. At the end of the day, Perry's choice to stay quiet left the door wide open for speculation, and Hollywood walked right through it. His silence may protect his empire, but it also guarantees one thing: the rumors will never stop. But when you strip away the gossip and speculation, Tyler Perry's legacy is solid. He's a self-made powerhouse who rewrote Hollywood's rules on his own terms. Still, those endless whispers about his private life didn't just follow him, they started bleeding into his relationships with other stars, especially Eddie Murphy, and that's where things really get messy. For decades, both men have stood at the top of black entertainment, Two giants in comedy and storytelling who should have been unstoppable together. Yet fans and insiders noticed something strange. Despite their dominance, their paths rarely crossed, and whenever they did, the energy felt off. That absence of collaboration only fueled talk of bad blood simmering beneath the surface. And here's where the parallels start to bite. Eddie Murphy knows what it's like to have the tabloids camped outside his private life. Since the 1980s, back in his Saturday Night Live days, rumors about Eddie's sexuality have followed him everywhere. The chatter went into overdrive after that infamous 1997 incident in West Hollywood. When police stopped him while he was giving a ride to a transgender woman, that single moment became tabloid fuel for years, no matter how often Eddie tried to brush it off. Insiders say that history left Eddie deeply sensitive. He hates being tied to those whispers. So now imagine him standing next to Tyler Perry, another megastar living under the same microscope. Sources claim Eddie's refusal to work with Perry might not be about scripts or egos at all, but about distance. Distance from another man whose private life invites the same invasive speculation Eddie has been trying to outrun his entire career. One Hollywood insider told Variety that Eddie Murphy has spent decades carefully dodging narratives that could damage his name, and he's not about to risk getting tangled up again. Eddie knows exactly how dangerous those stories can be, especially for black men in this industry, the source revealed. According to them, working too closely with Tyler Perry could stir up old headlines, blurring their personal lives together in ways Eddie has fought hard to avoid. Fans haven't missed the tension either. They've clipped interviews, dug up red carpet moments, and shared side-by-side videos online where Eddie looked downright cold toward Perry. To some, it seemed like Eddie wasn't just uninterested, he was intentionally keeping Perry at arm's length. Social media lit up with speculation, and the conversations always went deeper than simple rivalry. People said it looked personal. And in Hollywood, image is everything. A single rumor can define a career, especially when the subject is as explosive as sexuality. For black male celebrities, that pressure doubles. They're expected to fit rigid stereotypes while being picked apart for the slightest slip outside the lines. One wrong move, one association, and the narrative can spin out of control overnight. That's why Eddie's distance from Perry feels less like coincidence and more like strategy. By keeping Tyler at a distance, Eddie shields his own story, his own narrative from being dragged back into the fire. It's not just about Hollywood politics. It's about survival in a game where your image can make or break you. For nearly 40 years, Eddie Murphy has lived under a shadow of whispers. From the moment he exploded onto the scene in the early 80s, the tabloids locked in on his personal life. And unlike stars who parade their romances for the cameras, Eddie kept his private world hidden. That mystery, mixed with his reserved nature off stage, was like red meat for gossip-hungry fans and reporters. Everyone wanted to know, what was Eddie hiding? Back then, celebrity privacy was far more guarded than today, but Eddie's silence didn't shield him. It only made the curiosity grow louder. And by the late 90s, things came crashing down with one infamous moment, the 1997 West Hollywood incident. Police stopped Eddie while he was giving a ride to a transgender woman who also happened to be a sex worker. No charges were filed, and his team insisted Eddie was simply trying to help someone in need. But the headlines didn't care. The press spun the story into pure tabloid fire, and overnight Eddie's name was dragged into endless speculation about his sexuality. From that moment, the rumors never left his side. Every article, every whisper circled back to that one night. And Eddie, who almost never addressed gossip, suddenly snapped back on occasion. His responses were sharp, sometimes defensive, and at times critics claimed they carried a tone that crossed into homophobia. To fans, it felt like Eddie was trying to slam the door shut before the conversation could even begin. Pop culture analysts later argued those reactions weren't just random outbursts, they were survival tactics. Eddie was under immense pressure as a black man in Hollywood during the 80s and 90s, a time when any slip could get weaponized against you. His defensive jabs weren't just about anger, they were about control, protecting an image he had spent decades building while fighting an industry that loved to tear black men down. No charges were ever filed against Eddie Murphy, and police made it clear there was nothing suspicious about that 1997 incident, but by then the damage was already done. The headlines had caught fire, and the press didn't back down. They turned a brief, innocent encounter into a circus of speculation that followed Eddie everywhere he went. The frenzy that came next was brutal. Reporters dug through his past, magnified his words, and combed through his personal life with a microscope, desperate to tie him to any narrative that would sell papers. For a man who had built his career while keeping his private world under lock and key, this kind of invasive spotlight was devastating. Suddenly, Eddie wasn't just a comedy icon, he was a tabloid target. And the whispers didn't fade. Even without proof, the rumors only grew louder with time, stalking Eddie for decades. The incident became a permanent bookmark in his story, one that tabloids and fans still bring up whenever his name trends. For someone who had worked tirelessly to control his image, the fact that a single misunderstanding could spark years of gossip showed just how fragile celebrity privacy really is in Hollywood. Analysts often point to that moment as the turning point. The reason Eddie became so defensive in interviews, the reason he snapped back at critics with sharp, sometimes biting remarks. To him, it wasn't just a rumor. It was an attack on his identity, his career, and his legacy as a black man fighting to hold space in an unforgiving industry. And here's where things circle back to Tyler Perry. Insiders say Eddie's guardedness made him hyper-aware of working alongside anyone else facing similar speculation. That 1997 spotlight didn't just haunt him, it shaped his decisions, including his refusal to ever share the screen with Perry. In the 80s and 90s, the stakes for black men in Hollywood were sky high. Rumors about sexuality weren't just gossip, they could be career killers. If you didn't fit the mold of the straight, hyper-masculine archetype, you risked being marginalized, typecast, or completely shut out of opportunities. That was the brutal reality Eddie Murphy faced at the height of his fame, and it explains why he guarded his image with such intensity. Against that backdrop, Eddie's reluctance to work with Tyler Perry makes a lot more sense. It might not be about personal dislike at all. It could be strategy. With Perry carrying similar whispers about his private life, Eddie may have seen the partnership as dangerous, a collision that could have reignited questions he spent decades trying to bury. For Eddie, protecting his brand was survival, and Perry's presence threatened to drag him back into a firestorm he barely escaped the first time. Of course, Eddie's own history didn't help. Over the years, critics and fans have called some of his past comments about homosexuality outright homophobic. Old jokes from his stand-up specials, sharp remarks in interviews, and dismissive responses fueled the belief that Eddie harbored negative views toward the LGBTQ+ community. But cultural observers have a different take. They argue those words weren't necessarily about hate, but about defense. Imagine being constantly pressed about the most personal parts of your life in front of millions, with tabloids waiting to twist every syllable. Analysts say Eddie's sharp edges came from frustration, not prejudice, a way to shove the spotlight off his private life and back onto his craft. When you watch those early stand-up sets or interviews closely, you can almost see it. The discomfort, the irritation, the urge to end the conversation before it swallowed him whole. To Eddie, it wasn't just about denying rumors, it was about control. Control of his image, his legacy, and his right to keep some part of his life untouched by Hollywood's invasive machine. And in that sense, Perry represented a mirror Eddie didn't want to stand next to. A mirror that reflected the very rumors he fought so hard to escape. Over time, Eddie Murphy has shown real signs of growth when it comes to these sensitive topics. In recent years, he's even gone on record saying he regrets some of the raw, insensitive jokes and comments he made in the past. The very ones critics used as proof that he was dismissive of the LGBTQ+ community. That kind of public reflection suggests something powerful. Eddie's views have shifted, and he's become more understanding, more open, and more willing to own the mistakes of his past. It's proof that people can evolve, that old words don't have to define you forever. But this idea of Murphy's defensive shield never fully went away. Analysts say that same instinct to protect himself still explains why he has never warmed up to Tyler Perry. Both men have carried the weight of similar rumors for years, whispers about their private lives that Hollywood and the tabloids refuse to let die. For Eddie, working too closely with Perry wouldn't just be collaboration, it would be a gamble. It could reignite speculation, fuel gossip blogs, and throw both of them back under a spotlight they've each fought to escape. And in Hollywood, where image is everything, those risks aren't just cosmetic, they can cost careers. Every headline matters, every narrative can be twisted, And one wrong association can undo decades of careful image building. That's why Murphy's refusal to stand side by side with Perry may not come from personal dislike at all. Insiders believe it's a calculated move, a way to protect his legacy and keep control over his own narrative. In the end, it's not about hate, it's about survival. Two men with parallel struggles, each guarding their own image, knowing that one partnership could pull the rug out from under everything they've built. Rumors about their personal lives and the weight of public image definitely play a part. But that's not the only reason Eddie Murphy and Tyler Perry can't seem to vibe. There's another layer to this clash, one that's even more explosive: competition for power and status in black entertainment. Both men carved out legacies, but they did it in very different ways, and now they're standing on the same stage, each wanting the crown. Eddie Murphy came first, blazing trails in the 1980s and 90s with blockbuster movies, unforgettable characters, and a brand of comedy that shattered barriers in Hollywood. He wasn't just funny, he was revolutionary. Eddie's legacy set the bar so high that even today, people measure new comedians against the empire he built. He's the blueprint, the legend, the man who proved black comedy could dominate the mainstream. But then came Tyler Perry, years later, and he didn't just play the game, he rewrote it. Perry didn't rely solely on acting or comedy. He became a one-man empire, writing, directing, producing, and controlling nearly every aspect of his projects. His work didn't just make people laugh, it told raw, powerful stories about black families and communities that Hollywood had ignored for decades. And while Eddie was the face of comedy superstardom, Perry was the architect of a whole new system, one where black creators finally had ownership and power behind the scenes. That's where the sparks start flying. Industry insiders whisper that both men crave recognition as the leading voice for black audiences. Eddie is Hollywood royalty, and Perry is Hollywood's disruptor. And when two giants fight for the same throne, tension is inevitable. It's not just about ego, it's about who gets to write the history books of black entertainment. Take this for example. Eddie Murphy's camp has a pattern of staying silent whenever Tyler Perry drops a major project. No congratulations, no public shout-outs, nothing. To some, that feels like a calculated move, a subtle way of signaling disapproval, or at the very least, keeping their distance. And on the flip side, Perry's side plays the same game, avoiding any real acknowledgement of Eddie's work, like they'd rather keep things cold and professional than risk stirring the pot. When the two do end up in the same room, like at big Hollywood events or charity galas, the vibe doesn't exactly scream friendship. Observers always notice the same thing: formal nods, quick handshakes, maybe a short hello, but no laughter, no warmth, no signs of two legends bonding over decades of shared history. It's like watching two kings acknowledge each other's crowns, but never daring to sit at the same table. And of course, fans eat this up. Social media turns into a detective agency every time the two cross paths, with people analyzing body language, side eyes, half smiles, even the way they avoid standing too close. Entire threads pop up dissecting a 5-second interaction, with fans convinced they're seeing proof of a simmering feud. In the bigger picture, this quiet tension between Murphy and Perry says a lot about how messy power and influence really are in Hollywood, especially within black entertainment. Two men at the top, both legends in their own right, both too big to ignore, but apparently too proud to stand side by side. This clash between Eddie Murphy and Tyler Perry isn't just about movies or jokes. It's about power, legacy, and who gets the right to represent an entire culture on Hollywood's biggest stages. Their tense dynamic reflects something much deeper than two stars who don't get along. It exposes the unspoken rules and heavy expectations placed on black male entertainers. For decades, Hollywood has tried to box black men into narrow definitions of masculinity, demanding that they project strength, dominance, and hyper-straight energy to fit the mold. Any rumors, especially around sexuality, can be weaponized instantly, used to damage reputations, derail careers, and erase decades of hard work. That's why privacy isn't just a personal choice for men like Eddie and Tyler. It's survival. Advocates for diversity and inclusion have pointed out the same problem over and over. Despite progress, the industry still struggles with acceptance and open conversations around identity. The pressure is doubled for black entertainers, who not only battle racism, but also stereotypes about what their image should look like. One wrong headline, one offhand joke, and Hollywood will twist it into a scandal that follows you for years. That's the storm both Eddie and Tyler are navigating. Their complicated relationship is not just about personal slights or creative differences. It's about the enormous weight of image management in an industry eager to exploit weakness. Both men have clawed their way to the top, carrying entire generations of black entertainment on their backs, and now they're guarding their thrones with everything they've got. Together, their story highlights the tightrope walk between authenticity and expectation, between private truth and public image. And in Hollywood, that balancing act can be the difference between being remembered as a legend or being written off as a rumor. Eddie Murphy and Tyler Perry may have built massive legacies, but their climb to the top came with shadows they could never fully escape. Both men have racked up iconic wins, but they've also lived under the constant hum of rumors about their personal lives while facing pressures from an industry that rarely gives black men the freedom to just be themselves. In Hollywood, privacy is a luxury almost no one can afford. And for stars like Eddie and Tyler, the spotlight can feel more like a cage. The expectations are endless. Black male entertainers are judged on how they act, what roles they choose, and even how much of their personal world they're willing to share. And when whispers about sexuality or private choices start swirling, it doesn't just shape the headlines. It shapes how audiences, producers, and even peers view them. That kind of invasive scrutiny isn't just annoying. It's isolating, stressful, and at times, career-threatening. For years, both Eddie and Perry have had to carefully juggle this balancing act. They've worked to protect their reputations, deciding exactly what the world gets to see while keeping the rest locked away. But that kind of tight control comes at a cost. Misunderstandings, distance, and even silent rivalries with people who are facing the same struggles. That's the bittersweet truth about their Cold War. Two powerful men, both protecting themselves, but in doing so, building walls between each other. Until Hollywood truly embraces diversity, privacy, and respect for identity, this type of tension won't disappear. The saga of Eddie Murphy and Tyler Perry is proof that fame comes with more than money and applause. It comes with battles over trust, authenticity, and survival under an unforgiving spotlight. Behind the laughter, behind the billion-dollar empires, the struggle is still real. Every single day. For all their fame, Eddie Murphy and Tyler Perry remain locked in a silent standoff. Two kings of black entertainment who should have been allies, but instead became symbols of Hollywood's most complicated battles. Their story isn't just about ego or rivalry. It's about the crushing weight of rumors, the politics of image, and the fight to control how the world sees you. Eddie guards his crown by keeping Perry at arm's length, while Perry builds his empire without ever needing Eddie's approval. The tension between them is bigger than comedy or cinema. It's a reflection of the struggles every black star faces under Hollywood's spotlight. Identity, masculinity, power, and privacy all tangled into one Cold War that shows no signs of thawing. And while fans keep hoping for a collab that may never come, insiders whisper the truth. This feud runs deeper than scripts, and reconciliation might be impossible. One thing's for sure, Hollywood's glittering lights can hide the darkest shadows, and the saga of Murphy versus Perry proves that even legends carry secrets they'll never let the world see. If you want the real breakdowns, the scandals nobody else will tell you about, and the stories that shake the industry from the inside, you already know where to tap in. Stay locked with BarzBuzz, where the truth always cuts through the noise.